Racist cop pushes black woman only to face the report she wrote that ends his badge before sunset. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The afternoon sun hovered low over Riverside Plaza, turning the concrete warm beneath every step and painting long shadows across the walkway. People drifted in and out of small shops, talking softly, sipping iced coffee, unaware that a quiet collision between arrogance and truth was about to unfold in front of them. Dr. Maya Ellison moved with calm intention, a thin folder tucked under her arm, her posture steady as if she carried something invisible yet unshakable. She wore simple professional clothes, nothing flashy, but something about her presence drew subtle glances, an air of focus, a patience that didn't come from fear but from certainty. A gentle breeze lifted the edge of her notes as she paused near the plaza fountain, reviewing a page with measured attention. She had traveled here for work, though no one passing by could have guessed the weight of her assignment. Her eyes held the composed awareness of someone used to observing before acting, someone who understood that truth often revealed itself when you simply allowed people to show who they really were. She stood quietly, absorbing the scene, the echo of footsteps, the distant sound of traffic, the soft chatter of families enjoying the day, when she sensed a sudden tension shift behind her. Officer Blake Turner approached with brisk, heavy steps, the type of stride that announced itself long before his voice did. His uniform looked crisp, his badge polished, but his expression carried a rigid certainty that didn't come from duty. It came from assumption. He had noticed Maya earlier, standing alone with her notes, and something in him twisted the harmless image into a threat. As he drew closer, his tone stiffened. His shadow stretched across her folder before his voice followed. Without warning, he nudged her aside with a firm hand, not enough to injure, but enough to assert dominance in a place where none was needed. The contact was brief, yet loud in its intention. People nearby glanced up, startled, sensing more in the gesture than the officer realized he was showing. Maya steadied herself with a quiet inhale. She didn't snap back, didn't raise her voice, didn't let the moment crack her composure. Her fingers tightened just slightly on the folder, the afternoon light glinting across its corner. She looked at him, not with fear, not with anger, but with the calm recognition of someone who had already seen the ending long before the beginning began. Turner misread her silence as weakness. He straightened, convinced he had restored whatever order he believed she had disrupted. But Maya simply shifted her folder against her side, her eyes reflecting something he didn't notice, something he didn't expect. The certainty of a woman who already held the truth, the authority, and the report that would decide the fate he believed he controlled. The plaza kept moving around them, unaware that before sunset, the badge on his chest would no longer belong to him, and that the woman he'd just pushed was the one writing its final chapter. Officer Blake Turner lingered a moment longer than necessary, as if waiting for Maya to react in a way that would justify the story he had already written about her in his mind. But when she simply adjusted the edge of her folder and offered no resistance, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face, too faint for most to notice, yet unmistakable to someone trained to read people the way Maya was. The plaza's gentle buzz returned, but the air around them held a subtle tension, the kind that grows when one person believes they have won and the other quietly knows the truth has not even started speaking. Maya took a step to the side, her posture relaxed, allowing the late afternoon sun to fall across her notes. She scanned a page, her eyes moving with deliberate care, as though nothing about the interaction deserved a place in her attention. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was calm and steady, carrying the focus of someone who chose her words the way others chose footsteps on a narrow path. She said that she was just reviewing documents for a project and that she did not wish to disrupt anything. Her tone was Neutral, almost gentle, but beneath it lay an unmistakable trace of strength. Turner folded his arms, studying her as if he believed there must be more to uncover. The certainty he had shown earlier began to settle into something else, something closer to defensiveness masked as authority. He asked what she was doing in the plaza and why she was standing in the same spot for so long. His questions sounded official, but they were built on assumption, not observation. Maya lifted her gaze to meet his, allowing a quiet pause before answering. She could feel the weight of his suspicion pressing toward her, yet she refused to let it bend her posture or disrupt her breathing. She responded simply, explaining that she was conducting observational work for a departmental review and that her presence there was intentional and permitted. Turner's jaw tightened slightly, as if her answer did not match the picture he had painted. He glanced at the folder under her arm, the sunlight glinting across the thin metal clip, and asked if he could see her identification. His tone carried more impatience now, a sign that he felt her steadiness slipping through the cracks of his authority. Maya reached for her identification slowly, not out of fear, but out of professional discipline. Every movement she made reflected her training, her awareness, her practice calm. As she presented her identification card, Turner barely glanced at it before dismissing it with a short remark about unclear titles and confusing roles. Maya did not challenge him. She simply lowered her hand, keeping the card visible long enough for anyone watching to see the truth he refused to acknowledge. People nearby continued to sense that something was unfolding, their attention drifting toward the two figures framed in the warm glow of the descending sun. The sound of running water from the plaza fountain softened the tension, but only slightly, like a quiet breath in a room full of unspoken assumptions. Maya shifted her weight subtly, not stepping away, not stepping forward, just grounding herself with the rooted confidence of someone who had walked through much heavier rooms than this. She noticed every detail, the slight tremor in Turner's exhale, the way his fingers tapped against his belt, the momentary flicker of confusion in his eyes when he realized she was not intimidated. Something in him bristled at her composure, but she felt no need to alter her tone or posture. She understood that arrogance often grew from uncertainty, and that truth did not need to raise its voice. The sun dipped a little lower, brushing the edges of the plaza with amber tones. Turner straightened again, as if reclaiming a sense of control, unaware that the woman standing quietly before him carried far more authority than he imagined, and that every second he wrestled with his assumptions was another second shaping his future in ways he could not yet see. Officer Blake Turner shifted his stance as if trying to anchor himself in authority. Yet the more he observed Maya's steady composure, the more something unsettled beneath his expression. The warmth of the late afternoon sun stretched across the plaza, softening the edges of storefronts and casting gentle reflections across the fountain's rippling surface. People wandered past in small clusters, slowing only when they sensed the quiet tension woven into the space between the two figures. Maya adjusted the folder against her side, her fingers brushing the top corner as if confirming its presence. Inside were documents she had reviewed earlier that day, each page carrying observations collected through weeks of quiet work. Her mind processed details the way others breathed, effortlessly, instinctively, noticing tonal shifts, posture changes, and the subtle tug of ego disguised as duty. Turner cleared his throat, his gaze drifting toward the identification card she still held. The breeze lifted a few strands of her hair, but her expression remained centered, her breathing even. He asked again, this time insisting that her documents be explained in more detail, claiming that her story did not match the picture he had formed. His words carried a firmness meant to intimidate, but they landed softly against the wall of her composure. Maya replied with calm clarity, explaining that she was conducting observational fieldwork for her department and that her documentation required her to remain in public areas to assess behavioral interactions in everyday settings. Her voice held no defensiveness, only precision, and that precision made Turner pause longer than he intended. Something about the way she spoke, the measured certainty, left him unsure whether to press further or step back. He glanced toward a couple sitting on a bench nearby, noticing their quiet attention. Their eyes shifted between him and Maya, their curiosity laced with the discomfort of witnessing a moment whose imbalance was becoming increasingly clear. Turner redirected his focus, looking for another angle, asking where she worked, what division she claimed to represent, and why her paperwork lacked the type of bold labels he was accustomed to seeing. Maya listened without interrupting, her patience steady, her posture relaxed yet undeniably assured. When she responded, she offered only what was necessary, revealing nothing beyond the scope of what her assignment allowed. Every answer she gave carried a deliberate restraint, a subtle reminder that silence could be as powerful as any statement. Turner's brows knit together as he realized her calm was not the uncertainty he had assumed. It was something else entirely, something he could not articulate but felt tightening around the edges of the moment. Maya observed a faint shift in his breathing, a small sign that his earlier confidence was wavering. She noted the way his shoulders stiffened as if bracing against an invisible pressure. The plaza's hum filled the space around them again. A child laughed near the fountain. A passing bicycle bell rang softly. Life continued without interruption, unaware that a single interaction was steadily reshaping itself beneath the surface. Maya tilted her head slightly, the sunlight catching the edge of her identification card. She did not raise her voice. She did not challenge him. She simply maintained the same clear, focused gaze she had held from the beginning, a gaze that carried the weight of someone who knew her purpose long before the question was even asked. Turner shifted once more, sensing something he could not define, something that made the air feel different. He straightened his uniform subtly, as if trying to remind himself of the authority he believed he held. But as the minutes passed, he began to wonder, for the first time, if he was the one standing in the wrong place, asking the wrong questions, unaware of the truth standing quietly right in front of him. The sun continued its slow descent over Riverside Plaza, casting a warm golden haze that softened the edges of every storefront and turned passing reflections in the fountain into liquid ribbons of light. Officer Blake Turner shifted his weight again, his boots scraping lightly against the pavement, a small sound that revealed more tension than he intended to show. He watched Maya with a puzzled curiosity, as though trying to decipher a language he did not realize she had already mastered. Maya felt the shift in his demeanor, the subtle hesitation that broke through the certainty he had displayed earlier. She held her folder close, not as a shield, but as a reminder of purpose, of the quiet authority woven into every line of the documents inside. The pages held weeks of careful study, patient observation, and cross-check details, each one forming a picture far clearer than the moment Turner believed he was controlling. A brief silence rested between them, not heavy, but expectant, like the stillness just before a curtain rises. Maya allowed the pause to stretch, knowing that silence often revealed more than confrontation ever could. Turner finally cleared his throat again, a faint sign of uncertainty slipping through the surface of his voice. He asked another question, insisting this time that she explain why her identification card did not match the organizational structure he was accustomed to seeing. His tone carried the same firmness, yet the confidence beneath it had thinned. Maya answered with the same quiet precision she had held from the beginning. She explained that her department operated under a classification system not always visible to external agencies and that her work required discretion. She kept her eyes steady, her breath even, her tone unwavering. The clarity of her words held a weight that Turner could not quite name. Her calm made the plaza feel different, as if the sunlight itself paused to listen. A small group of passers-by drifted closer without meaning to intrude, their steps slowing as they sensed the imbalance of the moment. Nothing in Maya's posture invited concern, yet her silence carried an unmistakable strength, the type that comes from knowing one's identity even when others question it. Turner glanced at the people nearby, sensing their curiosity. The attention made his shoulders tighten. He pulled them back as though adjusting an invisible burden. He told Maya that her documentation needed to be verified and asked her to remain where she was until he decided how to proceed. But the words fell out of place, even to him, like puzzle pieces that did not belong to the moment unfolding. Maya responded with a gentle nod, not in compliance, but in acknowledgement. She could feel the tide shifting in ways Turner had yet to recognize. She had witnessed this pattern before, in countless interactions where assumption wore. The mask of authority. She had learned long ago that arrogance often revealed itself fastest when confronted with quiet truth. She glanced toward the horizon, where the warm glow of the sun had begun to soften into early evening amber. The light brushed across Turner's badge, casting a faint shimmer that felt almost symbolic, a reminder of how quickly the meaning of a single object could change. Turner noticed her glance and instinctively placed a hand near the badge, as if reassuring himself of its presence. He stood a little straighter, but his eyes flickered with something unspoken, a subtle awareness that the moment had become larger than the story he initially tried to shape. Maya exhaled gently, a breath filled with certainty. She had seen enough for her report, and Turner, without realizing it, had already given her more material than any document could demand. The evening light deepened, wrapping the plaza in a quiet glow as the path ahead for both of them silently began to shift. The early evening light settled gently over Riverside Plaza, casting a soft glow that seemed to wrap every surface in a warm, amber hush. The fountain's rhythmic splash blended with distant footsteps, creating a calm backdrop that contrasted sharply with the quiet tension forming between Maya and Officer Blake Turner. He stood a few feet away, arms crossed, his posture rigid yet not as confident as before. There was a subtle shift in his breathing, a slight tightening at the corners of his eyes, the kind of signs that revealed more than words ever could. Maya observed him with the same composed patience that had guided every moment of her day. The edge of her folder pressed lightly against her side, a familiar reminder of purpose. Inside that folder, handwritten notes and carefully compiled observations traced a story far larger than this single encounter, a story that was nearing its final page. Turner adjusted his stance again, as if trying to reassert a balance that kept slipping from his grasp. He asked her another question, one that circled back to her reason for being in the plaza. His tone remained firm, yet something softer threaded beneath it, a quiet unease he tried to hide. Maya responded with steady clarity, explaining that her work required her to observe interactions in public spaces and that Riverside Plaza offered a diverse flow of activity, suitable for her study. She spoke with calm precision, each word deliberate, each pause intentional. Her voice did not challenge him, yet it carried a weight that made the air feel still. Turner seemed caught between insisting on his interpretation and reconsidering it entirely. His eyes lowered briefly toward her folder, then lifted again as if trying to find a hint of uncertainty in her expression. But Maya's face held the same peaceful resolve it had from the start. Nothing in her demeanor matched the assumptions he had formed earlier. Nearby, a couple stopped to tie a shoe, their quiet presence adding to the soft hum of early evening life. Someone walked by holding a cup of coffee, glancing only for a moment before moving on. The world continued without pause, unaware that something unseen was shifting beneath the surface of this conversation. Maya glanced toward the horizon where the sun had begun its gentle descent, its light fading into deeper shades of orange. She sensed the timing of the day aligning with the path her work required. Everything she had observed, everything she had documented, all pointed toward this exact moment of clarity. Turner cleared his throat once more, a gesture that seemed more like hesitation than authority. He mentioned protocol again, suggesting that her documentation might need to be reviewed at a station for verification. But even as he spoke, his voice carried an undercurrent of doubt. He was no longer certain of the ground he stood on. Maya listened with patient attention, her breathing calm. She let the breeze brush across her face, let the soft echoes of the plaza move around her. She did not interrupt, When she finally spoke, her tone remained just as steady as it had all afternoon. She reminded him that her identification was valid, that her work followed authorized procedure, and that no additional verification was required unless conducted through appropriate channels. Her words were gentle, but they held firm boundaries, the kind that came from someone well acquainted with navigating both truth and tension. Turner blinked once, caught off guard by the quiet certainty in her voice. His posture straightened again, not from confidence, but from the subtle realization that he might not understand who she was or why she carried herself with such composed authority. A breeze drifted between them, carrying the scent of distant food carts and the faint laughter of children playing somewhere behind the plaza. Maya watched Turner closely, recognizing the familiar moment when ego met truth and did not know which direction to step. The sun hung lower now, its reflection glimmering across the metal clip of her folder. She exhaled softly, knowing the evening was guiding them toward an inevitable turning point, one that neither of them could delay for much longer. The sun dipped lower over Riverside Plaza, softening into a deeper gold that stretched across the pavement like a quiet reminder that the day was moving toward its final hours. The air carried a gentle warmth, mixed with the faint scent of roasted nuts from a vendor cart and the distant laughter of children finishing their play before evening settled in. Officer Blake Turner stood facing Maya, but something in his posture had shifted. His earlier certainty had thinned, replaced by a quiet tension that pulsed beneath the surface. His fingers tapped subtly against the side of his belt, a rhythmic movement that betrayed the questions forming faster than answers. Maya remained steady, her presence as calm as the soft breeze moving through the plaza. She held her folder loosely now, no longer pressed tightly to her side, as if the weight inside it no longer needed to be concealed. Her expression carried the quiet confidence of someone who had spent her entire career observing small details and waiting for the right moment to let truth speak for itself. Turner's gaze flicked once more toward her identification, then upward to her face. He asked another question, this one noticeably softer than before, wanting clarification about her department's role in local oversight. His voice carried neither accusation nor assumption, but an unfamiliar hesitance, as if he was beginning to sense that her presence in the plaza followed a purpose far larger than his earlier interpretation. Maya answered with the same measured clarity, explaining that her department conducted periodic evaluations of public interaction spaces and that her assignment involved monitoring patterns that affected community rapport. She chose her words with care, allowing him to hear only what she wished to reveal. Turner listened, but a faint crease formed between his brows. Something about her tone, her posture, and her unwavering calm hinted at layers he had not considered. He shifted his stance, glancing around the plaza, as though searching for another point of reference. A woman passed by with a stroller, offering a polite nod to both of them before continuing. A cyclist pedaled slowly through the far side of the square. Life moved normally, yet Turner could feel the weight of the moment settling more heavily on his shoulders. Maya tilted her head slightly, studying him with the same quiet attention she had shown since he approached her. Her eyes reflected the warm evening light, steady and unshaken. She understood the subtle transformation occurring in him, the gradual unwinding of assumptions that had shaped his behavior earlier. She had witnessed this moment many times during her work. The brief pause where certainty slipped and truth began to reveal itself in unexpected ways. Turner cleared his throat again, but his voice was different now, less rigid and more uncertain. He mentioned departmental protocol once more, but the words came out slower, as if he was no longer fully convinced of the authority behind them. Maya listened without interrupting, allowing the silence between their sentences to stretch naturally. She let the breeze carry the soft sound of the fountain, let the fading sunlight drape the plaza in gentle amber. Patience had always been her strongest skill, and she knew the value of letting someone arrive at their own realization. She could sense Turner approaching that moment, even if he did not yet recognize it himself. He studied her for several seconds, searching for any sign that might confirm his earlier assumptions. But all he found was a woman standing firmly in her own truth, unshaken, composed, and entirely unmoved by intimidation. Maya's fingers brushed the edge of her folder, a small gesture that seemed insignificant to anyone watching, but Turner felt something shift inside him as he noticed it. It was as though he sensed that the contents inside held more weight than he had imagined. The sun dipped another inch toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the plaza. The day was nearing its end, and with it, something in this interaction quietly realigned. Turner straightened his shoulders once more, not in authority, but in re-evaluation, as if sensing that the story unfolding in front of him was not the one he had believed he was writing. Maya took a slow, steady breath, knowing the moment she had been waiting for was drawing closer with each passing minute, and that the calm before revelation carried its own quiet power. The evening air settled into a calm, golden quiet as the sun drifted lower, brushing Riverside Plaza with soft amber tones that stretched long shadows across the pavement. Officer Blake Turner stood facing Maya, but the confidence he once carried had unraveled into something more fragile, something that lingered in the slight hesitation of his breathing and the uneasy movement of his hands. The plaza around them remained alive with gentle activity. A couple strolled past sharing quiet conversation. A teenager tossed crumbs to a small flock of birds near the fountain, and the distant hum of traffic formed a steady backdrop. Yet despite the normalcy, the moment between Maya and Turner felt suspended, as if the world itself had paused to observe what would come next. Maya shifted her folder slightly, allowing the fading sunlight to catch the metal clip once more. It reflected a thin line of warm light that seemed to highlight the very object Turner could not stop glancing at. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the same steady clarity that had guided every word she uttered that day. She explained that her assignment was nearing completion and that she had gathered the observations she needed. There was no sharpness in her tone, only quiet certainty. Turner's expression tightened, not in anger, but in confusion. He asked what she meant by completion and what exactly her assignment involved. His voice lacked the firmness he had clung to earlier, and instead carried a quiet strain that revealed the pressure rising beneath his assumptions. Maya studied him with careful eyes, noting the subtle shift in how he stood, how he held his shoulders, how he searched her face for something he could not identify. She could sense the moment approaching, the point where truth would become unavoidable. She had seen it many times before, in rooms filled with polished tables and measured voices, in hallways where decisions were made long before anyone spoke them aloud. Turner glanced around at the people nearby, as if hoping someone might validate his perspective. But no one paid him more than passing attention. The plaza was moving naturally, unaware that one man's understanding of authority was quietly unraveling. A gentle breeze lifted the edge of Maya's folder, revealing a glimpse of the top sheet inside. Turner caught sight of a bold header printed across the page, though. The breeze concealed most of the words before he could fully read them. His eyes narrowed slightly, trying to piece together what he saw. Maya did not hide the folder. She allowed the moment to unfold with quiet intention, knowing that Turner's questioning gaze was leading him closer to the truth than any direct statement could. He asked if she was part of a research team, a city commission, or some external audit group. Each guess landed far from the truth, yet each one revealed how deeply he underestimated the scope of her work. Maya responded with gentle patience, explaining only that her role involved assessing public interactions, ensuring standards were met, and documenting areas of concern. Her tone softened slightly, hinting at something deeper while still withholding the full revelation. Turner's breath caught faintly as he absorbed her words. The quiet certainty in her voice, the careful phrasing, the composed posture, all of it pointed to a level of authority he had not considered. He looked again at her identification card, his earlier dismissal now echoing in his mind with unsettling weight. Maya allowed the silence to stretch, giving him room to confront the shift taking shape within him. The sun hovered just above the horizon, casting warm tones across her face and turning the pages inside her folder into subtle gold. Turner straightened once more, but this time not out of assertion. It was something closer to realization, a tentative awareness that the narrative he believed he was controlling had never belonged to him at all. Maya exhaled quietly, sensing the truth settling into place. Knowing the moment she had been moving toward all day was finally within reach, carried forward by the steady rhythm of the evening light. The sun dipped closer to the horizon, turning Riverside Plaza into a canvas of warm copper light that shimmered across the fountain and stretched long, soft shadows across the ground. Officer Blake Turner stood facing Maya, but the certainty he once carried had faded into a quiet unease that showed in the slight tremble of his breath and the way his gaze lingered on the folder she held. The plaza around them moved at its own gentle rhythm. A group of teenagers laughed near a bench. An elderly couple strolled slowly past the storefronts, and a scent of fresh pastries drifted from a nearby cafe. Everything felt calm, yet the space between Maya and Turner carried a quiet, growing gravity. Maya held the folder loosely now, the metal clip catching the golden light as if marking the moment with its own subtle intention. She watched Turner with composed patience, noting every small shift in his posture. His earlier firmness had softened into something hesitant, almost reflective. She could sense that the realization she had been guiding him toward was finally beginning to settle. Turner's voice, when he finally spoke, was slower. He asked what exactly her role required and why her observations seemed so structured. There was no accusation this time, only an uncertainty that made his words gentler than before. Maya answered with calm precision, explaining that her work focused on evaluating public interactions, ensuring that standards were upheld, and documenting areas that required attention from the appropriate authorities. She spoke with a steady tone, revealing just enough to guide him without revealing everything at once. Turner listened intently, his eyes narrowing slightly as he attempted to piece together her careful phrasing. He looked again at the folder, noticing how purposefully she held it, how each of her answers aligned with a level of organization and authority he had not previously considered. The air shifted as a cool breeze drifted across the plaza, brushing through the leaves of the nearby trees and carrying with it the faint scent of evening dew. The sunlight softened, deepening into a richer amber that highlighted the growing contrast between Turner's internal uncertainty and Maya's unwavering calm. She tilted her head slightly, observing him with a gentle curiosity. She recognized the moment when assumptions begin to crack, when the truth, standing quietly in front of someone, becomes impossible to ignore. And Turner was standing at the edge of that moment now. He cleared his throat, glancing briefly at a family passing by before turning his attention fully back to Maya. He asked if her department conducted reviews of law enforcement conduct, his voice almost cautious, as though he was afraid to hear the answer. Maya allowed a small pause before responding. Her voice remained steady, soft but unmistakably firm. She explained that her work often intersected with various agencies, including law enforcement, when the situation required unbiased evaluation. Turner absorbed her words in silence. His posture shifted again, not in confidence, but in recognition. Something about her explanation carried a weight he could not ignore, a weight that aligned with the unease that had been growing inside him since the moment she first spoke. He looked at her more closely now, searching for clues he had overlooked. The calm in her eyes, the precision of her speech, the consistent professionalism in every gesture, all of it pointed to someone whose authority did not need to be announced. It was simply present. Maya's fingers brushed the edge of the folder in a gentle, unhurried motion. It was not a dramatic gesture, yet it held meaning that Turner sensed but could not yet fully articulate. The plaza lights flickered on one by one as the sun dropped lower, painting the scene in a soft glow that seemed to invite the truth forward. Turner inhaled slowly, the realization nearing his expression. He stood still, caught between the fading assumptions of earlier and the emerging awareness that the woman before him held far more significance than he had ever imagined. Maya watched him with quiet certainty, knowing the moment of revelation was almost here, carried forward by the steady rhythm of the evening settling into its final light. The last traces of sunlight slipped behind the buildings surrounding Riverside Plaza, leaving a warm twilight glow that settled gently over the evening. Soft plaza lights flickered on, casting calm pools of illumination across the pavement and reflecting in the fountain's rippling surface. The air carried a serene quiet, yet within that quiet stood a moment that felt unmistakably defining. Officer Blake Turner faced Maya, and for the first time since he had approached her, his posture revealed a quiet vulnerability. The lines around his eyes softened, the certainty in his shoulders eased, and the weight of the truth he sensed but had not yet confirmed pressed gently against his thoughts. Maya held the folder with a stillness that was neither defensive nor dramatic. It was simply the poise of someone who carried purpose without the need to announce it. The soft evening light brushed the edge of the metal clip, sending a faint glimmer across the surface that caught Turner's attention once more. He inhaled slowly, as though bracing himself, and asked in a quieter voice than before what exactly she was documenting and why her presence in the plaza felt more deliberate than her earlier explanation suggested. Maya allowed a thoughtful pause. The gentle sounds of the plaza filled the space between them, distant conversation, the rhythmic splash of the fountain, the faint hum of traffic rolling through nearby streets. When she spoke, her voice carried the same calm clarity it had all evening, but now there was something deeper beneath it, something unmistakably resolute. She explained that her department oversaw the conduct and performance of various public service agencies, including law enforcement divisions across the region. Her evaluations, she said, were used to determine compliance, identify concerns, and recommend corrective action when necessary. Turner absorbed her words with growing unease. His gaze dropped to the folder again, lingering on the pages tucked inside. He asked, barely above a whisper, whether she had been evaluating him. Maya met his eyes with steady calm. She did not need to raise her voice or embellish the moment. She simply told him that her assignment required her to observe interactions that impacted public trust and community well-being. Turner's breath caught as the meanings settled into place. He stepped back slightly, not from fear, but from the quiet impact of realization. His earlier assumptions about her, shaped by his interpretation of the moment, began to dissolve under the weight of truth. She continued speaking, explaining that her documentation covered patterns of conduct she had monitored over several weeks. Her work included reviewing reports, community feedback, and observational notes that had now reached their conclusion. Turner looked around the plaza, as if seeing it through different eyes. The same families, the same teenagers, the same ordinary movements of daily life suddenly felt like witnesses to a truth he had ignored for too long. He turned his gaze back to Maya, his voice shaking slightly as he asked what happened next. Maya lifted the folder gently, the soft motion revealing a clipped summary page at the top. She did not expose the details, but the header alone was clear enough to read in the evening light. Internal Affairs Preliminary Findings. Turner's shoulders lowered, not in defeat, but in the heavy acceptance that the moment he had stepped into believing he was in control had actually belonged to someone else entirely. Maya spoke with quiet compassion, telling him that her report would move forward through standard channels and that decisions would be handled by the appropriate authorities before the end of the day. His badge, she explained, was subject to review based on her findings. The plaza lights shimmered softly, casting a gentle glow across Turner's face as he absorbed the finality of her words. Maya watched him with steady eyes, recognizing the subtle shift inside him, the moment when truth reshaped understanding without raising a single voice. The evening settled fully now, calm and unbroken, carrying forward the quiet echo of a lesson written not in anger but in accountability, spoken by a woman who never needed force to reveal the strength she carried.